Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism. I'm also the co-founder of Digimentors, a virtual events, social, and digital consulting company. And it's my honor to convene this global conversation every single day. This is episode 83. That means we've been on lockdown in New York for 83 straight days. We are, of course, in the middle of a terrible pandemic, as well as a series of protests that have arisen out of the injustice of the murder of George Floyd. We'll be talking about both those issues tonight on this very special episode. We're live on Facebook, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, live on LinkedIn. Please share this with your friends and family. We want everybody to participate, everybody to get a chance to ask questions. Our episode is Ask the Doctors, and we have 4 awesome doctors who will be joining us. Dr. Angela Powell will be with us from Corning, New York. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, somewhere in New Jersey. Dr. Marina Kurian will be with us from Manhattan, and Dr. Odalis Sijin will be with us from Tampa in Florida. These are 4 great doctors who are going to be taking your questions and talking amongst themselves about everything that's going on. We want you to share this and tag your friends and make sure that people can see this. They can watch live or later. So please do share this right now. Before we start, we need to pay some bills. So we want to thank our sponsors. We want to point out 2 sponsors tonight. The first is Art & Co. Art & Co. has put together the world's largest art auction online in honor of COVID-19. Please make sure that you check out artandco.net, artandco.net, and check out what they're doing, such important work. Funds raised will go to 6 frontline organizations and more than 30 contributing freelance artists. Purchased artwork is a tangible display of your contribution made during this pandemic and helps meet corporate social responsibility goals. Art & Co. is the world's largest online auction to raise funds to help those affected by the coronavirus contagion, and it's run out of London. Please share and please go to artandco.net. Lots of great options for you if you're interested in art and who's not interested in art. So please check them out, and we're very grateful to our sponsor. To help during this pandemic. And as you know, there's so many people who are out of work, and we think that the tiny thing that we can do is to help people with their social media skills. Maybe it'll give them a chance to have a better job interview. Maybe it'll give them something to do while they're waiting on the economy to open up. And so Muckrack Academy and I are putting together a Fundamentals of Social Media course that's open to everyone, and it's free. There's a certificate, and you can sign up today. It starts in a couple of weeks. But save your seat at mrac.co/social. mrac.co/social. Take a screenshot or hit share right now, or please use your phone and take a photo and send it to someone in your life who could benefit from learning more social media. mrac.co/social. One of my friends said that her dad is always asking her for help on social. She said, I'm out of that business. You're going to take Sree's class. So they'll get a certificate at the end of it, and they'll learn a lot. I know my colleague Linda Bernstein and I have learned a lot putting this together. So we're now ready for our show. Please make sure that you also check out my archive of all our shows. This is show number 83. And we want to make sure that you get a chance to see all of them. If you go to youtube.com/Sreenet, you can see that right on the screen, youtube.com/Sreenet. You'll also get an alert when we are on the air. Before we bring in our guests, I want to just tell you, we've had some incredibly important conversations in recent days, including on Saturday night when we did this show, A Horrific Week in America. We had Keisha Center and Sunny Slaughter and Adam Server here, and they taught us so much about what we need to be thinking at this time. And one of the things that Sunny Slaughter, a business leader, told me is that instead of people who are not African-American asking their African-American friends, what can I do now? Ask yourselves, what have you been doing before? And we're asking that question of all of us as we watch the television and see what's happening all over this country tonight. So let's bring in our guests. This is a pre-scheduled conversation about medicine and healthcare, but we also know that this particular pandemic was affecting African American and brown people and poor people much worse than the general population. So it all sort of ties together, and we are very pleased to be able to bring you our following guests. So let me bring them on one at a time. We're going to give them a heads up. They're about to be on camera. Let's start with Odalis Sijin. Dr. Odalis is here. Hello.
Hi, Sree. Thank you for having me today.
Tell us where you are tonight.
I am in Tampa, Florida. I am originally born in Cuba, but I was raised in New York City. Went to NYU for my medical training. And when I graduated residency, came to Florida because that's home.
And how are you doing? How's your family?
Family is good. My girls are grown. Actually, I have one daughter in Gainesville who is working currently, and then my older daughter is in medical school. She's actually in Mississippi at University of Mississippi Medical Center. And she's keeping healthy. She's doing well. They're being very protective of their students. They're having them, avoid the campus, just like we're doing at USF, doing a lot of things on the internet.
Sure. Welcome and thank you for being here. Our next guest is Dr. Angela Powell. Let's bring her on. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Sree. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And where are you tonight?
And I am in Corning, New York. I work in rural America. So part of my time is spent in Sayre, Pennsylvania, the other part in Corning. I'm from the DC area originally.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I ask the same question of everyone. How are you doing? How's your family?
And so far, we are doing well. Our rates of the COVID-19 pandemic in this area are actually pretty low. So we are still sheltering in place like many others and wearing masks in public and doing all of the necessary social distancing. But thankfully, everyone is still staying safe.
Well, we appreciate you joining us tonight. I'm sure you've already had a tired day. Let's join our next guest. Sujana Chandrasekhar is here. She's joining us from somewhere in New Jersey.
Hi. Hi, Sree. Hi, Odie. Hi, Angela. I'm very happy to be here. Yes, I am in a undisclosed bunker in New Jersey. I've been on your show a couple of times. I love being on this show. I love your guests today. I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Thank you. And we're just so glad to have you here. It's not that mysterious where you are, but we just like to make it seem that way. It seems exciting. Let's go to our fourth doctor. We have too many doctors on one show, but here we go. Here's Dr. Marina Kurian is also here. Hi, Marina.
Hey, how are you guys?
How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much.
And you're in Manhattan. How's your family? I know there was a big protest on the east side of New York. Was that, you're on the far east side?
No, they were there. I live, so there was a protest on York, then there was one on 2nd. So it was happening. My daughter came home around that time. So she was like, you're not going to be able to get home because they're walking and marching down. But I think it was very peaceful compared to, what people are hearing about the rioting and the looting and things like that. That was not what's happening. It was a true protest, peaceful protest.
And they were, I think, all headed towards Gracie Mansion, where the mayor lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Yeah, I assume so.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you all for being here. And we want to tell everybody who's watching, this is your chance to ask 4 doctors a question. They all have different interests, different backgrounds, and we're going to get a chance to hear from them. And they'll take some of your questions, and we'd love to have them know where you're watching from around the world. So this is this part of the show where we show this kind of global tour. So we're going to go around very quickly and see who's watching from where. Anand's watching from Andhra Pradesh in India. He is right there joining us early in the morning. It's 6:30, so he's woken up early for us. Jonathan Borstein is in Union Square, New York, in Manhattan. He's been seeing the troubles right outside his window.
Yeah.
The people protest during the day, and then the rioting and the violence sometimes at night. Jonathan's been here for 83 straight shows. I am really grateful. And he says the protests are over for the day. For the first time in a few days, I can give the show the full attention it deserves. Thank you very much. Ashok is here. He says, rainy morning, cool morning in Kerala in India. Shrishti is watching from Indiana. So we have somebody from India and Indiana watching together, not together at the same time. And Shrishti is our fantastic design director at Digimentors, our company. And we want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that if you would like to have your own show like this, or you would like to make your conference go online instead of physical conference, contact me. We can help you. My email is sree@sree.net, and we'd love to help you. Don't cancel that conference without talking to me. Let's see who else is watching. Paula Kiger is here from Tallahassee. So we have Tallahassee and Tampa covered in the show. Dr. Odalis is from Tampa and Tallahassee. Paula Kiger is on our fabulous team here at Digimentors. We also do another show, a weekly show on Sunday mornings. This week, you could go back onto our show and go back and look at this amazing conversation we had on Sunday morning. Sunny Slaughter, Joe Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Mona Abaza from Colorado, and all of us talked about the news and what's going on in the news. So that was also a very special day. Thank you all for being here. Let's look at a couple more comments, and then we'll go to questions. Dylan Coelho says, hello, and Rose is here. She's one of our producers, and she's joining us from Milford, Connecticut. And she and Vandana Menon produced this show. 83 straight days wouldn't have been possible without them. And Daryl's watching and says, I'm enjoying the show from Richmond Hill, Queens, the epicenter of the epicenter in the United States. So sad that how this virus has been knocked off the news, even though people are still getting sick and still getting and are still dying here. Rose says 4 doctors on the show, and she certainly noticed, as does everybody. Let me start with Odalis and a question about as you're seeing the pandemic kind of knocked off the front pages and you're seeing what's happening, what are your thoughts going through your mind right now?
I think to myself, actually, that 2020 has been a very challenging year. Here we are already in June, and I feel like we've been holding our breath the entire year. We've been hit with this COVID crisis and been quarantined for quite a while now. As physicians, our schedules have changed dramatically. We've gone from being told to only wear issued masks. Now we're wearing cloth masks. They're asking us to save our equipment and wash it at home and bring it back. And in the middle of all this, just when we think that things are going to get better, we have this unfortunate and tragic event happen where this gentleman, I understand he passed a $20 bill. And I mean, who hasn't that happened to? I myself have had a $20 bill that was not genuine and passed it on not knowing. And I was told at the cashier, oh, by the way, this is a fake 20. And to think that an event like this could happen at this particular time and kind of reopen those wounds that have been there all along from the beginning of the foundation of this nation. And once again, it's like rubbing salt in a wound that's never healed. And once again, we see, the public just demonstrating their frustration, their lack of trust in the system, in the process, which is what we all would like, is trust in the process. This person is going to get, justice. But my heart goes out to my friends and just the family of Mr. Floyd, who, did what every one of us has had an experience with at one time or another in life. And he was treated like a criminal when he did something very innocuous. So it's been a very trying year, I think. It's been a very challenging year. And it's tough. It's tough.
I hear you. Let's go to Angela Powell. Dr. Angela Powell, I'll ask you the same thing and ask you to reflect on what's going on in our country right now.
Well, as an African-American physician, obviously my background and experiences will mirror many of those who are protesting injustice and racism and continued prejudice and bigotry around the United States. And watching the demonstrations and seeing the the anger and rage that is engendered from these types of injustices happening has just caused me to reflect some on my life experiences as a physician and going through training and experiencing, some of the implicit biases that we've all experienced somewhere along the way. And while I'm thinking those things and I'm reflecting on those things, I'm realizing we're also dealing with a health crisis that none of us would ever have anticipated happening in our lifetimes. And we're attempting to provide care and quality care to our patients, but also at the same time wanting to protect ourselves from, becoming infected or from infecting our families. And how do you juxtapose dealing with racism and prejudice that's so in the forefront right now while also attempting to preserve life? So it's a very fine balance that I think all of us are having to navigate right now. And it's unfortunate that at this time we're looking to our leaders to provide us with guidance and support. And there are instances where we're just falling short and not hearing the words that we need to provide some calm and give us a little bit of peace and solace in this challenging time. So I'm hoping, my son being a graduate from college this year and not having an opportunity to wear a cap and gown and graduate, I'm hoping that his generation will recognize that this is an anomaly and this isn't the norm and that there is still a bright future ahead.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know that it's difficult in so many ways already, especially if your son just graduated, and we wish him the very best.
Yeah, thank you.
But you also had a chance to see the kind of pain that everybody's going through right now. How have you reacted to that, Angela? Seeing lots of people coming together, even as there are people pulling us apart.
Well, I'm encouraged that my counterparts in medicine, like friends that we have here in this panel, and those of us that have a voice, that we're using it in order to attempt to make change happen. And if there's any opportunity for us to use peaceful protest and to use our words and our intellect to sway the minds of individuals that have the ability to legislate change, I think this is the moment for us to be utilizing that voice. Mm-hmm. And the more collective that voice is, the more powerful it is. And so I'm finding that my colleagues are joining me in writing, in communicating through virtual fora, through forums, through any means that we have to express the message that we're unified in requesting change happen now, and not that it get delayed like it's been delayed in the past with Ferguson, with Baltimore, with other instances that we've seen. I mean, Rodney King happened when I was in college. So.
And I saw Rodney King's daughter on TV today, calling out everyone on how badly all of this has been going, and nothing's changed in so many ways. And I want to bring in our other doctors as well. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, reflect on what you just heard and also your own thoughts, please.
Thank you, Odie and Angela. I think you're really articulating so much of the pain and the difficulties that we have. Physicians occupy a very interesting and very noble position in society. And I think where politicians may lead for other reasons, I think physicians are felt to lead for the health reasons, for the right reasons for the population. And when I was thinking about topics that were bothering me last week on Thursday or Friday, I was really thinking about the racial disparities in contracting and suffering from the ravages of COVID-19. And I was thinking about the ways that we as physicians and organized medicine have been trying to figure out how to keep all people safe and get all people healthy, knowing that this disease is really affecting disproportionately people of color and people of less wealth. And then this weekend happened, and the absolutely horrific events. I was at a vigil yesterday Sunday, and we just kneeled down on one knee for 1:09. A minute, and then a second per minute that the knee was down on Mr. Floyd's neck. And it was horrible. And I can't imagine the kind of the feelings you have to do that. So what we have is a terrible health crisis right now in the background of racial inequality. And then the racial inequality was brought to a forefront. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping, because I always try to hope, that there's something good that will come out of things. I'm very much hoping that this will open up a conversation, a dialogue that gets us to the next step and the next step and the next step, and gets us to parity with our brothers and sisters of all walks of life and of all colors of the rainbow, because I think that's what makes our country strong, our world strong and healthy. And I want to give a shout out to my friend, Dr. Sunil Dutt, also an ENT, also watching us from Bangalore, India.
Oh, nice. Okay. And let's go to Dr. Marina Kurian right here in New York City. Go ahead, Marina, can you hear me?
Am I on? It looks a little frozen to me, but
no, you're on.
Anyway, okay. So I mean, I agree with everything everyone has said, and I was struck by a comment made by an African American colleague of mine on this other women's chat group that we have, when someone was saying, you know, in this pandemic, should people really be gathering to do these protests?
Oh, sorry, we may have lost Marina, but the others are here, so we'll.
But you know, Sree, I think her point is correct. Like, what do we say for people? We're all gathering.
Yeah.
We see people without masks confronting other people, confronting police officers who also aren't wearing masks, and people are asking my advice, and I'd love to hear Marina's take on it now that she's back.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. I was hearing like a lag from everybody else, and I thought, wow, their internet's terrible. And then I realized it's
not you, it's me.
A colleague of mine, a colleague posted, well, what are the choices, you know, going out, which is foremost, and I'm paraphrasing and I'm not capturing the truth. I mean, I can't give you the exact essence. I'm giving you the essence, but not exactly what she said. But if you're at risk as African Americans to go out and potentially die at the hands of the police, or you go out and you protest, you get COVID, and you're still facing disproportionate care and utilization of the healthcare resources that are out there, so that you're still likely to die. So either way, rock and a hard place, you know, what we've said about COVID and how it definitely affects people of color and different communities. That's what we've seen certainly in New York, and where as who was it who tweeted that they were at the epicenter of the epicenter in Queens. So those are all issues. I think also it is a great wake up for healthcare to address this. Many of our societies have already posted comments on how that the racial disparities are actually hurting people, and this is a healthcare crisis as well when we have this implicit racism in this country, and that this has to be addressed. And I think this is a wonderful turn of events in terms of not all the bad things that happen, but that it is a focus, and there's so many great minds looking at it to try and improve. And you know, I think that, you know, I have 2 brown kids, right? And I worry about my son more than my daughter going out, but I can't imagine the higher and heightened concern that any African American parents would have when their kids go out. So that shouldn't be, and that's something that a lot of people say, no, you just have to act nice. You know, if the police stop you, just don't argue, don't do anything. And a lot of times, no one's arguing, no one's doing anything, and it's still such a risk and such a fear. And you know, Sree, you have 2 kids. Once you have kids, that's all you do is you just worry about them constantly. And then on top of this, you have this other layer.
Absolutely, and that's something we certainly are all paying attention to. Odalis, we already have our first medical question came in. So we're going to go right to you. Faisal Samir asks, is it necessary for everyone to wear a mask in public? I guess the question would be, still wear a mask in public? We've been on lockdown for so long, etc.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. And I really like what Marina said. And I just want to address something that occurred to me, is that people believe so strongly in their conviction about the racism issue in this country that literally what they're saying by protesting is they're going out and risking their lives because it's worth it. The issue is that important. Masks, there isn't a huge amount of evidence about masks. If you remember, at one time they said, no, we're not going to wear masks. They don't work. Then suddenly we went to masks, and now we're even wearing cloth masks. I can tell you, in the hospital, not only are we wearing cloth masks, but we're encouraged to wash them and bring them back because we're trying to save PPE. So the masks are meant to keep your mucus, droplets, saliva, sneeze, whatever, from getting out and potentially making mist and infecting other people. They're not so much to protect you, but it's to protect other people. And obviously, if you're going to be outside around people that might be elderly or ill, they might not look elderly, but they may be immunocompromised, then that's the reason to wear masks. And, we don't know how effective that is, but there is evidence in other countries that do wear masks regularly, like, for example, in China, where they've gotten, the infection rate under control a lot better than we have. So.
Thank you, Doc. And I know that you have to leave in a couple of minutes. So if I can ask one more question for you, and then
absolutely,
we'll let you go. Tell us a little bit about your own specialization and what your little bit about your career as well.
Well, let's see. Like I said before, I was born in Cuba. I was raised in New York City in Brooklyn, went to NYU, and then moved to Florida. I'm a general OBGYN, and I've been in private practice since 1991. I actually have a soft place in my heart for the underserved. So I actually moved to Mississippi in 2004 and was there for 12 years. And then moved back to Florida, here to Tampa. I love OB and I love OBGYN. I love surgery, and I do treat high-risk pregnant women. And I haven't subspecialized at this point. I'm a generalist. I do robotic surgery. I do high-risk pregnancies. So I kind of love it all.
I hear you.
Odie, can I ask you something?
Yes.
People are asking me about their risk if they are pregnant or planning to get pregnant during COVID-19. There was sort of a worrisome article that came out, I think, in JAMA last week regarding thrombuses in the placenta. What are you advising your patients regarding COVID exposure or COVID potential issues regarding their pregnancies?
That's a wonderful question. And I think that's a question that's on a lot of women's minds right now when they're making plans potentially about pregnancy. I think that if you're young and healthy and there's no rush for you to get pregnant, it wouldn't hurt to wait, only because with time, we're going to know how to better manage COVID, and we'll also have more information on COVID. Right now, we don't have a huge amount of information on COVID and pregnancy. When women are pregnant, we know they're immunocompromised. They're more at risk for getting viral infections, any kind of infections, and potentially having serious side effects such as pneumonia with viral infections in particular. So that's why we're very concerned about pregnant women being exposed. In terms of transmission, we don't have a lot of information. It does not seem like COVID is transmitted directly via the placenta. There's no COVID that has been isolated in breast milk or amniotic fluid, for example. There are babies that have been born with COVID, but we don't know if that happened sometime during the pregnancy, during the delivery process, or afterwards. So one of the things we're advising is, as I said, if you're young and healthy and you can wait to get pregnant and you can wait a year or two, that would be great. If you're, let's say, 40 and you don't have time to wait, you need to get pregnant, get pregnant. And the best thing to do, which is true for all of us, is practice social distancing, wash your hands with soap and water. And I always tell people this virus is enveloped in a lipid envelope, and soap will take care of that. So simple soap and water, social distancing, masks are fine. Be careful about visitors. You don't have to have visitors. You can just live who you live with, because you don't know who's been exposed to who. So that's it.
All right. Before you go, there's got to be a question there's a question that's got to be aimed right at you to answer this question. Daryl says, the beginning of the lockdown, there were predictions of a baby boom, but it seems like people are having less sex generally because of isolation. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is a complex question and topic. And actually, one of the additional bad things that's happened with COVID is there's been a dramatic increase in domestic violence. Mm-hmm. And just because there's domestic violence doesn't mean there isn't intercourse occurring. But it's an unfortunate consequence of being cooped up in the same close quarters, and people have arguments and they can't get away from each other. And I do believe there is going to be a baby boom, and most of my colleagues do as well, in 9 months or so. But I think there is a lot of stress and a lot of frustration and a lot of a lot of violence towards each other at home.
Did you see the meme, Odie, that said that they're all going to be firstborn children? Because people who already have kids are like cooped up with their kids, homeschooling them and everything. And they're like, no, not.
Here's a prediction from Jonathan Borstein. He says, I predict a divorce boom.
Okay, let's hope not.
It'll accelerate.
I don't know. 3 months later, I figured out that my husband and I probably get along just fine. It's been as you said, 83 days, and I think those of us who've survived it probably going to survive it.
I thought the problem was we couldn't get to a divorce lawyer, and so that is I think what Jonathan's hinting at. We're going to let Odalis go. Odalis, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Dr. Odalis Sijin's been here.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you, Odie.
Okay, everyone.
Thanks so much,
Stay safe, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye,
Thank
Odie.
you very much. Enjoy Tampa. Well, a lot of us who live in the Northeast are dreaming of going down to Florida, and she's already there. Let's go to Angela with your reflection on these medical questions that have come up so far.
Well, I don't think that I will comment on the birth rates in 9 months. I think I'll leave that for Odie. But as far as masking goes, certainly we are still in a phase of discovery when it comes to this virus. And the things that we know is that close contact and having someone who's an asymptomatic carrier able to spread the virus is definitely a risk that the mask wearing and social distancing is attempting to address. And so for those of us that are practicing in higher risk specialties like ENT or dentistry or ophthalmology, where we're having to examine patients very close to their face, where they're breathing on us, they can cough on us, sneeze on us, what have you, and then aerosolize viral particulate, having the mask for the patient and for the provider, I think is, I think it's definitely something that we should be doing while we're continuing to learn more about this. And I think the CDC, along with other public health officials, are continuing to give us guidance, which is why we went from not wearing masks initially to now everyone has to wear a mask, because they're recognizing that the amount that we don't know, we need to protect ourselves in the interim.
Sure. I love it when these doctors get to ask each other questions. So please, all of you jump in as we go forward. But I want to read a couple of comments in the meantime. Anand says, Sree, let's talk. I've gone through intense racism, and today we help groups from Palestinian and Israeli kids influenced by suicide bombers heal pain and become ambassadors of peace. So we forget when we're here in America that there's so much other stuff going on in the world, and yes, we want to always be the center of attention, and there's other things going. Oshik says hello. Nonchalant Human says, right now here in my city there are no COVID cases. Still, I'm afraid of going out. I wonder where he is. What place in the world has no COVID cases?
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's great, right? Let's all move there.
Wait, we're all going to move, and then they're
Exactly.
Actually, a patient of mine just came in today sort of for a checkup before he goes to join his wife, who's up in at the base of Taos, New Mexico, or maybe at the altitude of Taos, New Mexico. And he said there are no COVID cases at all, but now is the time when people come because it's cool and beautiful, like Switzerland up there, he says. So now you're going to see these smaller communities that are sort of destination or vacation communities that may have been immune, so to speak, or without cases. Now suddenly there's a fear that small places like that don't have hospitals that are equipped with ventilators and adequate proning and all the stuff that we've talked about with care for sick COVID patients. We're worried that now we're going to see these small, idyllic rural communities where there may not be healthcare if there's a spike there. And I think a nonchalant human may have hit on a topic that actually will become of great interest over the next couple of months as people sort of finish up school, even if it's at home, and then kind of go to someplace that feels safer for them.
And that's a question for Angela. Is in the rural areas, does it feel safer? Does it feel like fewer cases? Talk about that, please.
Well, certainly, I think that our incidence in this area is lower. I don't think that that's up for debate. But we are living on larger lots of land. There's a lot of farming in the area where I am. We are spread out just based on the geography. And I think it's just a matter of the shelter-in-place orders being lifted and people starting to go back to their usual activities of gathering for sporting events or going to concerts or going to the movies again. I'm not even certain that that's going to be happening anytime soon. I think I'm getting ready to probably watch my first movie, new release here over the next weekend. So we'll see how that goes. My big screen will be my living room.
Oh, okay.
But aside from those types of activities, I think it's true that in this rural area where I live, the incidence is lower, and it gives you a false sense of security that you're immune unless you live in a skilled nursing facility or you live someplace where there's, a hot spot. We have a few hot spots for our nursing homes, unfortunately.
That's something that we should always be looking out for. Mark Lee is watching from North Carolina, and we just got breaking news that the president is moving out the RNC of the Republican National Convention from North Carolina because the governor of North Carolina had said that he would enforce strict social distancing, and he couldn't get 50,000 people into the big stadium, for example, and that's upset the president, and he's going to remove them. What does it feel like as doctors to have somebody at the highest point in the land, highest authority in the land, telling folks that kind of the opposite of the guidelines that his own medical and health professionals are saying? There's not a political question, it's just a straightforward question about leadership at this time. Marina, your thoughts?
You see me squinting and frowning over here? Darn it, she could still see. It doesn't really make any sense, and I'm sure his advisors are telling him not to say that, and he is really acts like a third grader much of the time, and he's being petulant, and he can't have his way, so he's going to move. He threatens, and he acts on his threats, and so he's moving the convention to a different state. I don't know. What can you do? It's just it is a little bit embarrassing. I think that if you are so stubborn and so willful that you cannot take the consideration of population health into mind, and you can't set forth a best example of something to do, refusing to wear a mask. How about him and Pence? And the fact that was it the Mayo Clinic that let him in without the mask? I mean, I can't get into my hospital without a mask. I work there. They're like, no, you can't come in. Sorry. So
I can't get into the bagel store without a mask. You can't get anywhere without a mask.
Or the home improvement store.
That's probably one thing, right, Angela, that the do it yourself little projects have gone up high.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been to Home Depot, so I know what you mean.
You know,
Folks,
I feel like the incident, the horrible, the murder of Mr. Floyd came at a time when everyone was sort of at their wits' end. 80 days in lockdown, way too much of your family, whether you like them or not, feeling like, come on, isn't this over already? And then this sort of other horrible thing happened, sparking very much needed protests, very much needed vigils, and then sparking this very aggressive vandalism and looting. And I think when we have had leadership that has not emphasized the need for maintaining some degree of safety, masks or eyewear, don't spit into people's faces. There's a big concern. I think one of the comments was, what happens with all this tear gas? We're talking about aerosolization of particles in the office. We're talking about people coughing at us. But what if we're spreading tear gas and people are coughing and hacking? How are we preventing transmission of both COVID and other diseases that people get coughing on each other? So, I think I found today to be an extremely sad day. I was in my office, which is right by Rockefeller Center, and I've lived in New York since I was 6 years old, and yes, it's only 20 years ago, but but I've never seen Saks Fifth Avenue boarded up. Every single store was boarded up. There's an ATM in the wall of my building on Madison Avenue and 48th Street, like in the heart of the center of Manhattan, which, we've all viewed for a long time as the center of the world in many ways. And that was completely vandalized. There's just like garbage bags and duct tape over it because somebody managed to break into an ATM machine. So I found today so sad because as a physician, I'm worrying about my patient's health and the global health in this COVID pandemic, but I'm worried too about the unrestrained, unisolated protests and about the anger, the anger and then the secondary gain that I'm seeing. So society wasn't great today in my mind.
Well, I would argue though that the opportunism being put on the shelf for a moment shouldn't detract us or distract us too much from the overarching issue of unrelenting racism and devaluing of human life that has been occurring for decades, particularly in the African American community. And if you start to look at that particular issue and just to use a metaphor to keep your eye on the ball, because we've been talking about these protests within the NFL, and we haven't been paying attention to the underlying issues that have caused these types of protests. So if we just use razor sharp focus for a moment, the vandalism can be repaired, the graffiti can be cleaned away, the garbage can be cleared, but the lives that were lost will not be brought back sometime in the future. And so it's unfortunate that we're all open wounds right now. I think all of us with the pandemic, we're already open wounds. And now the African American community is not only open, but we're bleeding. And everyone is watching it in real time.
Yeah. I agree with you. I went walking today too. Madison Avenue is boarded up, all those things. Those are the riots, the rioters or the looters. That's a distraction. And it's unfortunate that, as you said, those are opportunistic events. But the real issue is the blatant racism. And I was thinking, and I have always thought this, that, I don't know if you guys know, when I was in training, there was a survey that was out. So you may have heard the survey that they said, who's the best surgeon, who's the worst surgeon, right? So the worst surgeons were left-handed women. Hello. Right here. Here's my hand, right? So my program director kind of relished telling me this, and I was like, well, don't you think that's an issue about training? Like you guys literally should be training people better. And it's really about education and not about the person and their handedness. But I will say that while I may have had it a little bit harder as a woman in surgery, I would say that every single one of my African-American colleagues in medicine, in any area of medicine, has had it 10 to 20 times harder than I've ever had it. And so I've always been, I've always acknowledged that and respectful of all of the gains that they've made despite incredible obstacles and hardships and prejudice and slights, just things that, my colleagues have to face it. I've faced some of it, certainly, but really it is so much more. And so, I love, Angela, that you're here and that I would like you to speak to that actually a little bit, but it's also, as you said, that's another wound. I mean, it's the fact that you've had to work 20 times harder, not just twice. Like we say as women that we work twice as hard, but you, my dear, have worked 20 times harder to get where you are, to gain the respect of your patients, your peers, your colleagues, and maybe, obviously not all of them. Dr. Chandrasekhar is a huge fan. And, so.
Well, I'm a huge fan of hers too.
It was easy, but, it's just, it can be so difficult when you show up to be the doctor. I mean, we face this as women doctors. We walk in a room, they're like, are you the nurse? I mean, you hear this all the time, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't really, it does bother. And over time, those are like microaggressions that you feel, or little bits of moral injury, but there certainly has been much, much greater moral injury in general because of this prevalent racism. And it's in medicine. Like I said earlier, I'm excited that healthcare is really looking at it and trying to understand it and do something about it. One of the great programs that's out there is the University of Michigan Ann Arbor program. They have this great way of introducing a lot of diversity into almost every committee and department that they have. They go out and actively recruit for diversity, and they feel that it makes their institution stronger. And I really think that that's been like a true beacon in this country for how we should be doing things. And our surgical societies that I'm involved with have also noticed, but they're also speaking to the incredible tragedies of the past week and hoping to show their solidarity with the African-American community.
Well, something you might not know, Marina, about Angela is that she's currently the chair of the Women in Otolaryngology section of the American Academy of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery, which is a very long-winded way of saying ear, nose, and throat surgeons. But she also has served our country admirably and with great distinction in the military. So maybe, Angela, because you are, I love being your friend, but I love being your colleague, and I love all that you represent in terms of honor and service. And perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about your story.
Well, this is a short program. I won't say too much about my story. I will thank you, Sujana, for recognizing me in that way. I think it's our friends that actually help us to aspire, and so certainly I consider you to be a mentor and a dear friend. I served in the Navy for 13 and a half years. I just separated from the military in December of last year. And I am currently chairing Women in Otolaryngology through the fall, and then we'll turn over that title to my counterpart, Dr. Litvak. But I think that any professional, African-American professional in the healthcare system, whether we are physicians or nurse practitioners or we have doctorates, I think all of us would say that we've experienced those microaggressions that you mentioned. And we've also had overt racism as obstacles to our career paths. And when you're an intern in general surgery and you show up because there's an emergent case and the patient needs a consent, and you're standing there in your white coat with your stethoscope and they say, when's the doctor coming? You get your first experience of what it's like to not be recognized when you're standing in front of someone in plain sight with your credentials showing, embroidered on your jacket. So there's a wonderful JAMA article that was a resident survey recently for any who are interested in hearing some of the stories from currently matriculating residents about being asked if you're the orderly, or having someone ask if you're taking their tray when you come in to check their wound post-operatively. Or I mean there's a laundry list of things that I think we all can tell you about in our stories that almost sound like the identical story, just with a different name or a different face attached to them. But it doesn't change our resolve at all, because people that choose this career, they're choosing it, and this profession, they're choosing it out of love and desire for service, in the same way that anyone would choose a career in the military. So people who join the military and serve their country and die to preserve what we hold dear for the freedoms that we have in this country, they're not doing it because of some secondary gain. They're doing it out of just sheer patriotism and love. And I'm thankful that I had that opportunity, and that there are others like me who are still serving now that that I continue to call dear friends.
I will also say that, all of my military colleagues have great poise, confidence, and presence when they speak, and and you can really see that with you as well. And so 13 years, was it 13? 13 years?
13 and a half, yeah.
13 and a half, but it definitely makes a difference. And I think there are other great aspects of being in the military, but of course, patriotism rules. And I do thank you for your service, and all of our other military colleagues as well.
So where do you ladies think we're going to go?
I was just watching this fabulous conversation. I wanted to let the three doctors kind of hang out, and we all felt like we were eavesdropping with respect and hearing such a great conversation. But I also want to be very conscious of everyone's time. It's already 9:50 here on the East Coast, and Dr. Powell and Dr. Kurian and Dr. Chandrasekhar have been so wonderful. I want to read a few of the comments and then go to questions so that we can get you all out of here. Let's see. Sunil Dutt says, I hear you, Sujana Chandrasekhar. Sunil Dutt, as you also know, is the name of, it's like being named Clint Eastwood in India. It's like a very famous old-time Indian actor's name. Pavan says, both racism and protesting racism make you sick, sadly. Cherry Cherian, by the way, one of the great names of all time. Cherry is watching from Kerala in India. This is a great Malayali name. Both Marina and I are from the state of Kerala. Apollo is watching. He's a New Yorker who lives in Las Vegas. And great to have you here. And let's see who else. So many folks are tuning in. People are tagging their friends. Everybody, please tag your friends and please share this with everyone. Sunil says our son Aditya Dutt studies at UIUC. And that's he says that he came back home to Bangalore, India before we locked down on the 24th of March. I believe it would most likely be online teaching for another semester before we get a grip on this virus. Vaccine, he asks, and students get back to the universities. Your thoughts? So it's a long question there. We'll ask, I know at least one of you has a kid going into college. So let's start with Marina. We have somebody whose kid is leaving college and another who is somewhere else in that spectrum. So let's ask Marina first.
So my daughter's going blue this fall, and the president of University of Michigan is, I think, an immunologist, and so he's really looking at this very closely. And I think from talking to other parents and looking at even what they're considering doing in the public school system here, is that they may have a method of social distancing where they will start college and they will start schools, but half the kids go on certain days and the other half go on other days. So I think that schools will start in the fall. I think there was an interesting comment that was quickly denied by the AMA as being, or the CDC as we have no idea if this is true and we shouldn't believe it. But one of the Italian doctors stated that he was seeing that the coronavirus had mutated and was not as severe as they saw much earlier in northern Italy. So this is a northern Italian doctor who is saying that the coronavirus is less severe and not causing as many symptoms. So that's an interesting concept, and it made me immediately think of that Dean Koontz book and that piece from that book, and then also Sylvia Browne's predictions. I was like, it came and then it mysteriously disappeared. I was like, oh my gosh.
So let's see. I have one son who graduated virtually from Syracuse University a couple of weeks ago, and one who's going back to his last year at Yale University in the fall, and he's actually moving back up to New Haven in a couple of weeks because he has a summer internship data mapping some astronomical telescope. That's about as much as I understand of anything he tells me. I can recognize him by his face, and I think that's pretty good. But what I think that the universities are trying for types of social distancing, maybe, making, let's say, a dorm unit a family. So that's your family, like your family now that you're interacting with without social distancing. There's antibody testing and there's active virus testing. And we are seeing that over time, over a short period of time, maybe a month, the antibody testing has gotten easier to do and a little bit more reliable. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to have a vaccine by the fall. I just think it's too soon. We're not. So yes, I've heard that, the virus is mutating. And then I've heard, this particular coronavirus doesn't mutate quite as much as, let's say, an influenza virus that mutates all the time. But I don't think we're going to have a vaccine. I think we'll be fortunate to have a safe and fairly effective vaccine in the early part of 2021. So I think it will have to do with testing, with safe habits. Odie signed off by saying, just remember to wash your hands. Just wash your hands. Soap and water does the trick. And I think maybe we'll just all be a little less huggy, kissy to each other and be able to actually see each other and use the masks as needed, particularly if we feel like we're coughing or sneezing. But it would be very nice, I think, emotionally for people to get back to as normal of a life as possible, including our kids who either need to go to their elementary, middle, or high schools, or go off to their colleges and universities, or frankly get employed again. We didn't hit on the 40 million unemployed in our country. I mean, this was just a terrible confluence of events that I think we saw come to light this weekend.
All right, let's go to a couple of last questions. By the way, Jonathan says that 8 police vehicles raced by, followed by a New York 1 truck. Rose says that her 2 sons' colleges have said they will start school in mid-August and will end early by Thanksgiving or mid-December. I've always wondered why they don't start later, like Columbus Day, which is in mid-October, instead of trying to finish early, start a little later. So that's an interesting way to look at it. Mark Lee says 21st century and the kind of racism that Angela talks about still exists, and that is scary. If I can go back to Angela on that question of when people see you, we showed a couple of minutes earlier I guess it's your investiture ceremony as you were made the president of the women in your discipline, right? Let's call up that picture again. There it is. Right. That's it's a ballroom somewhere, right? You're inaugurated. You've been saying "look like a surgeon" as their hashtag, where because people have said to you, or at least you felt they've said, well, you don't look like a surgeon.
Well, I think that's the case. You're diminutive because I'm only 5 feet, and then I'm African American in ENT. I think African American females may make up 1 per state if you counted us all up and put us in a room. So
One per state, what? I'm sorry, one per state?
African-American female otolaryngologists, there are probably less than one of us per state if you were to put us all in a room. So there aren't very many of us. So, and African-Americans make up only 2% of our specialty. So they're just from the standpoint of sheer numbers, people would presume I'm something else if you were to allow them to, based on the statistics. But the statistics lie in this case because I'm here. So that being said, I did want to comment a little bit on what Sujana was saying about our children and returning to school and also staying safe and social distancing. And I want to remind everyone in this forum that African Americans also, in that 40 million number of unemployed, there are also a lot of them that are either doing jobs where they can't social distance, or they're not able to get jobs because of the types of skills that they have. You know, whether they're, in my son's case, he's doing a degree in hospitality. Well, right now there isn't a whole lot of hospitality going on, you know, whether it's party planning or social gatherings or working in hotels or cruise ships or what have you. And so I'm concerned about those students who are graduating and don't have a job to apply for, you know, because of the types of degrees that they have or the types of skills that they have. And so we're in a situation right now where the pandemic is important and it's impacting us in significant ways, but there are all these other downstream effects, including the unemployment rates in the African American and other brown communities, including socioeconomic status impacting our access to healthcare, and the disparities that occur in the systems where we have access to healthcare, where they don't have necessary PPE or they don't have necessary drugs or they don't have the available resources to provide the care that's required. So we're facing some uphill battles in the coming year, regardless of a vaccine. So I recognize someone was asking about the vaccine, but even when we have them, who's going to get it? How much is it going to cost? Where is it going to be made available first? I mean, you remember how they started to have drive-through testing for COVID-19. Where were those drive-through tests placed? They weren't placed in the middle of the ghetto or, you know, in the middle of an underserved community. They were placed where there was affluence, wealth, and a healthcare system that could afford to pay for those tests to be made available when they were already expensive. Regardless of the other issues, we've got to keep our eyes, once again, razor sharp focused. So this forum is a great opportunity to start.
Thank you. We'll just read a couple of comments. Shatachi, who's been watching, says, exactly, Dr. Powell, in my opinion, for Black people, it's less about COVID and being shut in and more about just being tired. It is damn tiring not being able to just be. Like, you know, that's one of the words we hear from lots of different folks. Rose says, I think universities want to start in the summer and end before what could be a second wave in the winter, but I'm not a doctor, and here are 3 doctors. What about that point? I thought the second wave is fall rather than winter, but we should also acknowledge that even these doctors, no doctor knows any of these answers for sure, right? Even the sainted Dr. The sainted Dr. Fauci, who I've not seen in 3 weeks, even he doesn't know all the answers. No one knows.
No one knows, but I think many of the colleges are doing that. My son's college and his friend's college, they're all planning on just starting in August and then ending by Thanksgiving, and then they're going to be out until they resume in January. So that seems to be, they're trying to compress it, so there won't be any, go home for Rosh Hashanah. There won't be a Columbus Day break. They won't, they're just going to try and get the schooling in.
Yeah, let's look at the last.
It seems a little counterintuitive, though, because if we're going to see a second wave, I think the idea is that second wave is going to come in the late September, October timeframe, right? So, and I think the problem is that all of our crystal balls came from the factory damaged. So none of us are really able to predict the future, and we can only see based in retrospect. Like, unfortunately, based on this non-social distancing that we saw both at the Lake of the Ozarks and at the beach in Florida, but also in the protests across our country this weekend, we will be able to know the status of contagion now in a couple of weeks when we do or we do not see a spike in disease. So I think we're going to be learning more as we go along.
And that's going to be compared to, like, this is actually, you know, what I've said about COVID is that this is horrible. The economy is tanking. If you think about like real estate even, right? Like, you know, all of these big companies, like Google's not in their office and they're not planning on coming back till January. So is Facebook. So there, all these spaces that they're underutilized, all these companies are like, well, we can all work from home. It's an incredible tech revolution or evolution. However, there are people left holding the bag, waiting for rents and things like that. So there's the economic damage. But when you look at H1N1 and flu and that type of flu, those peaks, when we start getting those vaccines in September, October, November, but I think that those peaks are a little bit offset in terms of when patients are actually showing up with the flu, so that you start seeing peaks in November, December, January. And that might be why, you know, these schools are like, okay, if it runs even remotely similar, and there's some papers and some data to suggest that it is, then, you know, getting the kids home in November and keeping them there might be helpful. But we don't know. We're guessing.
It's a great
And I
thought,
would just say that the peak is going to happen at a different time based on the prevalence in the area and how quickly the governors release the shelter-in-place orders per state. And so you may see peaks regionally if there's a consortium of states that all decide to open up at the same time, and then you may not see a peak in an area where they weren't seeing high rates to begin with, like in my rural community, for much later. And I just wanted to comment on Rose Horowitz. It said there may be one per state of African-American ENTs. I just wanted to clarify that. There may be one per state of African-American female ENTs. African-Americans make up about 2% of the otolaryngology population. So not quite one per state if you look at all African-Americans.
Well, there's still not enough, when we want more to be able to go in. And earlier, Mark was talking about the role of HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities.
And I went to one.
Yes.
Go Spelman College.
Yes, very nice. And Mark is asking for everyone's social media handles and what you're all doing on social. So we'll start with Marina. She's at Marina Kurian, and she's also that's on Twitter. What are you on Instagram, Marina?
Okay, at Marina Kurian MD, but I actually have two, apparently. I didn't realize that. I had hired a marketing firm a while back to do social media, so I did have at Marina Kurian MD, and then on my personal, it's just at Marina Kurian. I have a lot of work to do on Insta, so stay tuned. Go to my at Marina Kurian MD and sign up. I haven't posted since 2016, apparently there, so it's just hard, you know, like you don't know, Sree, because you are on social media all the time, but it is hard to do the day job, do the things at home, and then also, you know, why are you on your phone, Mama? You're on your phone again. I'm like, okay, wait, I'm tweeting. I have a beautiful 140 character, you know, statement that I'm about to make, and I got to focus here, you know, so that's kind of hard to do all the time. So it's why I'd probably say that Twitter's my most active, and then
you're pretty good on Facebook too, don't forget.
Yeah.
But that's your personal Facebook. Yeah, you don't want patients.
I have a work one too. Same thing. It's Marina Kurian MD is my work.
I feel like I'm a shrink talking to you about your social media.
Wait till you teach me how to get my YouTube combined. That's what I need. I have two different YouTubes, similar situation, and yeah, one is uploaded and active. It has 2 followers, and the other one's at 78 right now, which is but that's the one that's not active. So I need to.
All right, Angela, save us here.
I tried to have my kids save me, but they didn't. What do you?
Okay, we're gonna go.
I probably need to take your course because I'm not really on social other than being on here with you. So I think I have a Twitter handle, maybe, you know.
You do. It's Angela Powell MD. Angela Powell.
Yes,
MD.
there you go. I've got one, maybe. I think I've gone on there 4 times. But I follow my friends, so I definitely follow Sujana on there, and I know she's on there regularly, so she'll keep me on my toes.
Sujana, these folks are making it sound like you don't do any other work, just be on social because you're
I'm just a butterfly. That's what I am, a little social butterfly. I've been doing a lot more Insta and because of you, Sree, I started a YouTube channel, and it's called Dr. Sujana. So it's Dr. Sujana. And mostly it has little informational videos about COVID as we got to know more information about, how to wear a mask, what's a pulse oximeter, what are the symptoms to look for. I recorded a cute little video with my daughter asking me questions I had received. So I enter the brave new world of social, and then I pull back, and then I enter a little bit more, and I pull back, and I think I'll keep entering. I'll keep entering until I feel like I've gotten it right, which probably will be never.
That's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You're still moving forward, so
I'm still moving
or
somewhat
you just
forward.
dive into the deep end of the pool, and then you hope you swim.
Yeah, well, I did on Twitter, and I got bad things can happen to you on Twitter. So
we should also
maybe not the deep end.
As we're joking around, we should acknowledge that women have it tougher on platforms like Twitter because of the trolls, and female doctors and women of color have it even tougher. So that's certainly an issue. Kanika, who's a doctor and has been on the show before, she says, we all need to take Sree's course. Excited to see docs active in social media. At SoMeDocs is what she has tagged, and that's that course we're talking about. Free course for everybody. Social fundamentals of social media. Everybody can join. Everybody can participate, and it starts in just a couple of weeks. Free certification course, fundamentals of social media. It's for everyone, including doctors and nurses and anyone who needs it. mrac.co/social. mrac.co/social. All right, with this, we're going to say goodbye to these wonderful doctors and let them get back to their evening. It's 10:15 here in New York City, and I want to start by giving each of them a chance to say goodbye and anything else they'd like to leave us with. So we'll go to Angela Powell, MD. She's at Angela Powell, MD. Maybe if we all follow her, she'll start tweeting. Let's see.
Oh my goodness, I'll have to start tweeting. Don't follow me too closely.
6 feet away, right?
I'm just thanking you for the invitation and for this platform to allow people to have their questions answered in such a safe space. And I'm hoping that everyone recognizes that this is a time for change and that they're being part of the solution.
Thank you. That's very kind. And we look forward to having you back to talk more about medicine and healthcare issues. And we wish you the very best and stay safe in Corning, New York.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, let's go to Sujana Chandrasekhar.
So I wanted to also say thank you. I love this conversation with Odalis Sijin and Angela Powell and Marina Kurian. These are great women. I remember when I took over a man's practice, he left town and I took over his practice several years ago. I acquired his office manager, and one day she just turned to me and she said, Dr. C, I didn't know there were so many women doctors around, because it turns out that I chose a lot of women doctors as my friends. And this was just like hanging out with some awesome friends and answering some good questions. And everybody out there, stay safe and stay healthy, and let's get through this and let's make our world better.
Beautiful. Wonderfully said. Thank you so much. Let's go to Marina.
All right. Well, I want to thank you too for inviting and getting all of us together. They talk about in sports, and believe me, I'm no athlete. I'm a mental athlete, definitely not a physical athlete. Okay, but anyone who plays tennis, like my husband played tennis, and he'd be like, he's like, oh, he's much better than me, but I'm going to play with him. And I was like, why? Because when you play up, your game gets better, right? So today, Angela, Odalis, and Sujana really upped the game, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with such smart ladies, and of course, the ever polished Sree. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the two doctors, Sujana and Marina, have been on multiple shows of mine, including on our New York Times read along and my WBAI show. You haven't lived, Angela, till you have taken a call-in show in New York City on WBAI. All kinds of interesting calls you get, because these are not polite people all the time. Sometimes, of course, they're polite, but sometimes they come at you with serious questions. And by the way, both the extreme right and extreme left have said they're not taking the vaccine. So I'm really worried about that. That's a conversation for another day, and maybe you'll join us on the radio and we'll put you through that baptism.
Oh, just give me a call.
She's gonna lose my digits. You're like,
Or you could tweet me, right?
there you go. With that, we're going to say goodnight and just thank them, all three of our guests. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So if you want to meet me in the virtual green room in a couple of minutes, I'll come say hello. But thank you so much to all three of you. You were great tonight, and you were so helpful to so many people around the world, and we're very grateful to you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
Sree.
everyone. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. And good night. And we're just so grateful to everybody, and especially those 4 amazing doctors in one evening. You'll get that here on this show. Please make sure you are following us on Twitter, Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. And also, please go to the YouTube channel, because that's where you'll get a real sense of what we are doing because of our 83 days of shows. And we're just so grateful to everyone for being here. Now, a reminder from our sponsor, we want to just give a shout out to our sponsor, Art & Co. Art & Co. wants you to get involved. The world's largest online art auction is taking place for fundraising for COVID-19 victims. It's the largest online auction to raise funds to help those affected by the coronavirus contagion. It's run out of London, and funds raised will go to 6 frontline orgs and more than 30 contributing freelance artists. Purchased artwork is a tangible display of your contribution made during this pandemic and helps meet corporate social responsibility goals. So we hope certainly that you will take a look. artandco.net, artandco.net. And with that, I want to say thank you and say good night. We will have another fabulous show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. We're going to talk to a leading expert on the pandemic from Hong Kong University. Dr. Keiji Fukuda will be here. He has worked at the top levels of WHO as well as the CDC. He's an American working out in Hong Kong, and he's going to share lots of views, including what does this mean that President Trump is pulling out of the WHO? First, he had stopped funding, and then he's pulled out. What does that mean? We'll find out. Please join us 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday night in New York City and around the world. Thanks very much, everybody. Email me, Sree@Sree.net. We're looking for funders. We're looking for sponsors. We're looking for story ideas. We're looking for guests. Self-nominations, welcome. Email me, Sree@Sree.net, and see you on my subscription to YouTube channel, youtube.com/SreenEt. Please take a look. Thanks very much, everybody.